Hey everybody, today we're going to be covering the first PowerPoint of Unit 3, the will of the people. So we'll be covering a number of things here, from what public policy is, what is mass media, stuff of that sort. So first of all, we need to establish what public opinion means. I'm sure you've heard the term before, public opinion or public opinion polls. It's pretty simple. It's just like, how do the people feel about a certain topic or a certain person? So it's the ideas and attitudes that people hold about an issue or a person in particular. All right, so what influences public opinion? Numerous things. Your background, where you come from, what you look like, how old you are, what's your income, what religion do you follow, where do you live, stuff like that. That can all influence public opinion. Next, mass media. All right, TV, internet, books, newspapers, radio, movies. These are all things that can influence how one thinks about certain things. Next, public officials. All right, so people in charge of certain things. So the president, Speaker of the House, maybe even your local representative, your state senator, whatever. All right, and last, interest groups. All right, we'll talk more about interest groups in a little bit, but their job is to persuade people to think a certain way on something. So, for example, the NRA, the National Rifle Association, they're a super powerful interest group that pushes for, less regulation of gun laws. All right, so they clearly have an agenda, and that's their job, to influence public opinion. All right, so how is it measured? It's measured in a number of ways. Election results, okay? So if you elect somebody who is strongly for expanding Medicaid, say, that's going to be the person who wins that election is going to take that as a referendum. It says, hey, the people voted for me, and one of my big campaign promises was to expand Medicaid, and they're going to take that as, hey, the public want me to do that. All right. There's also public opinion polls. All right. Surveys of people's beliefs about a person or an issue. All right. So when we say mass media, we're not just talking about one thing here. We're not just talking about the news. We're not just talking about movies. We're talking about all these different things that you can see here, right? This can be newspapers, magazines, TV shows, TV networks. This can also include movies, a lot of things, when we say mass media. There's print media, right? So books, magazines, newspapers. There's electronic media, TV, radio, internet. Internet is especially big because that is on the rise in terms of influencing public opinion, and that's only going to continue to happen, the more that we become digitized. All right, so what will the media cover? Well, oftentimes whatever will attract the most viewers. That's how that works, right? So people will often complain, oh well, the media doesn't cover actual news, and people who say that totally have a point. But how often do people tune into the news to watch actual news coverage? A lot of the time, people want outrage. They want stuff that makes them tune in, right? So it's a double-edged sword there. The public agenda, all right? So the public agenda is like issues, problems, scandals, whatever is receiving the most money, time, and effort from the government and from the media, for that matter. And the media has a huge role to play because it can affect the public agenda. All right, it has an effect on what the public thinks is important, right? And like we said before, the media is, not just one thing. It is a huge conglomerate of, it's a huge amalgamation of things. All right. All right. Other roles of mass media. Candidates for office. All right. So they give candidates exposure to run for office. This includes TV advertisements, maybe debates. They also give candidates ideas of what the public, is concerned about. If you're running for office for something, you're going to have probably some sort of public relations team or communications team that, they're Their job is to tell you what the people think about certain things and how that candidate can get their message out there. Also, testing public reaction. All right, politicians will sometimes leak information to the media to see how the public will react to it, especially those in government. They'll do this. They might, have a connection to someone who works for a prominent newspaper, and they might, leak them a story about, hey, we're thinking about passing this bill. So they want to pass that on to that person, and maybe that person will write a piece about it in their newspaper, and then judging on the people's reaction, that government official will know whether or not, maybe they should move on with it or not. All right. Watchdog role. This is arguably the biggest role that the media plays. All right. The watchdog role basically means that the media is there to keep the government in check. All right. This can mean the president. This can mean Congress, right? This can mean your state's governor, whatever. All right. So it's to expose things that are going on. So if something wrong is going on, it's the job of the media to keep government honest. All right. The First Amendment, is arguably the most important amendment in the Bill of Rights. It covers so many things. It protects the press from what's called prior restraint, so censorship of material before it's published. So, if there's a story about the president and a scandal or something like that, you can't just, call up the news network or whatever that's going to, expose the story and threaten them. That's censorship. You can't do that. This is America. So unless it's a lie or something, which we'll get to in just a second, there's no stopping that. Right. That's the job of the media, is to expose things, right? To inform the people. All right. So I kind of started talking about this a little bit earlier. So there are certain limits to freedom of the press. There's two big things here. There's libel and there's slander. Libel says that you can't print false information to hurt somebody. All right. So you cannot say, the president was not born in America. If the president was in fact born in America, that is libel. You cannot print that, right? Same thing when it comes to slander, except that's spoken, all right? So you cannot speak falsities about somebody. Someone can take legal action against you if they want to, if you're going to go out there and say something that is patently false. All right. Then you've got what's called the FCC. This is a regulatory board. They regulate broadcasting, and they can punish a station for breaking certain rules. So the FCC also is, part of their job is to, make sure that, news organizations aren't, or anchors aren't cussing on the air, stuff like that. All right. All right. So up next, interest groups. Talked about these a little bit earlier. We're going to dive into all the different kinds of interest groups now. Interest group is it's an organization that, it's a group of people that share a certain point of view about an issue, and they unite to promote those strong beliefs that they have. All right, so people join interest groups if they feel really strongly about something and they want to push this issue to the forefront. All right, the First Amendment, the freedom of assembly that's in the First Amendment, that's one of the things that helps, allow this to happen. All right, so we got private interest groups. There's a number of different private interest groups and examples of it. You got economic interest groups, people that focus on economic issues. You've got the Chamber of Commerce, the AFL-CIO, the AMA. These are all the examples of them. But these are private interest groups. All right. This is different from, say, our next group here, special interest groups, and then we'll talk about public interest groups in just a second. Special interest groups maybe promote a certain ethnic group, age, gender, religion, or other special issue. All right, so this is what I mentioned earlier about the National Rifle Association. This is a special interest group. All of these as well. All right, they represent a special issue, a certain issue, a particular thing. Lastly, you've got public interest groups. They support causes that affect the lives of generally almost everybody. All right, so there's the LWV, the League of Women Voters. I don't know if they're still going to do it, especially this year with how crazy everything is. But in the past, members from the League of Women Voters have even come to the school to register seniors to vote. All right, so they educate people about candidates and issues and just try to generally raise awareness about the importance of voting. All right, another example is MAD, Mothers Against Drunk Driving. That's an issue that affects everybody, so that falls under the public interest group umbrella. All right, interest groups are hugely influential in government. They can form what's called PACs, political action committees. They raise money for certain candidates. Especially now that we're in a presidential election year, you'll see a ton of PAC ads. Unless you hear at the end of a message, I'm Donald Trump and I approve this message, or I'm Joe Biden and I approve this message. A lot of times PACs will run ads targeting a certain candidate. And so if you don't hear that at the end about, one of the two candidates saying, I support this message or whatever, a lot of the times that's how they're PACs that are doing that. So they are not directly tied to a candidate, but they're a group of people that clearly it's easy to see who they support. Next, going to court, so they can take cases to court to bring attention to them. Lobbyists, these are people who work for interest groups. They lobby or they influence, or they try to anyway, lawmakers to pass certain bills, right? So, this is a big problem in politics. Many would argue that there are too many lobbyists in Washington, people working for big special interest groups that, may not be looking out for the best interest of the people at large, but, it may be a certain issue. However, remember, First Amendment, it protects big time against protects the rights of these interest groups, because that falls under freedom of assembly, freedom of speech, right? So that's why they have as much power as they do. The First Amendment. You can't just say I don't like you, so we're gonna get rid of this certain interest group. It's against the Constitution. All right. So that's it for this first PowerPoint for Unit 3. Make sure you take the quiz on the next slide, and have a good day.